seen work on so many Italian causes, always giving himself, always lending himself. You know who he is, you know his accomplishments. But you don't know, he is a phenomenal, active Italian-American, taking time out to be here, and he's just the greatest. So, Mr. Chaz Palminteri, here you go.
Thank you very much. It's so nice to see all these Italians in one room like this. John called me yesterday, Sabrina called me and they asked me, I was down here doing an event, and they said, would you come over? And I was jammed up between two different engagements, and I said, what's going on? They said, oh, we're doing this Italian-American thing with all these young Italian men and women, and I said, all right, I'll be there. I've got to be there, because you always got to remember, Italians, we got to stick together. It's the most important thing. The only thing that I never say negative about any Italian Americans. The only thing is sometimes, especially the old school guys, a little jealous. So you got to be careful. Italian Americans, we have to help each other. That's very, very important. You see it. Not that you have to give. Look, if there's a job between an Italian and someone else, and they're both really good, I hire the Italian. I mean, that's the way I do it. You know, that's okay. But if the Italian isn't as good as the other person, then I can't. So, but I just want to say a few words. My real name is Calogero Lorenzo Palminteri. That's my real name. Chaz came when I was a kid, and they said C, then Chaz, and that's how that happened. My mother, my grandmother and grandfather on my father's side was from Menfrey, and my mother's family is from Messina. And they came over, obviously, to turn, and I tell you this story for a reason. They came over to turn of the century. And then they met, my father's father, my mother's, parents. They met in the Bronx at a dance, and they got married. And my father, Lorenzo, was a bus driver, like the movie A Bronx Tale. My mother, Rosita, was a houseworker. And then, what happened was they had me, and I'm named after my grandfather, Calogero. And I say this to you guys because you have to think about how proud it is and how you're all so special to be here. I think they said it takes 2,800 grandparents to be here now. So it's not an accident. It's not an accident that you're all here. And I'm so grateful to the Basil Russo and John and Vincent Viola and Savino was putting all this together, because you are the voices of the young Italian Americans, and that is really important. You know, people ask me, I grew up in the Bronx, in Little Italy in the Bronx, and I was this young boy who had this dream that I wanted to be an actor. To me, there was always something more. I wanted to be an actor. Then one day, I decided, in my teens, I told my parents, look, I really want to follow this dream, and they were like, go get it. My parents were like, Dad, get a city job. No, that was sometimes the old school way. If you have a dream, if any of you have a dream, you're exactly like I was. A young boy who grew up in we didn't have money. We grew up in an Italian neighborhood. It was a wonderful neighborhood where I grew up. And growing up there, I had this dream that I wanted to be an actor and a writer. And I started following through it. Then I got into a band. I sang for 10 years on the road with a band. And then finally I said, hey, I got to go back to Manhattan and be, you always wanted to be an actor, writer. So I left music and I took a risk. A risk. Sometimes you have to take a risk, folks. The bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. And I got a part, my first big part was on Broadway. I was on Broadway, but I was an understudy. For those of you who don't know what an understudy is, you don't really go on, you just have to sit in the wings in case something happens. So I went back to my neighborhood and I said to everybody, I said, hey, I'm on Broadway, I'm going to be an understudy. And I grew up with all these wise guys, and they said to me, oh, we want to come and see you. So I said, well, you really can't. And they said, why? Are you embarrassed? I said, no, I'm not embarrassed. I said, I'm an understudy. And the wise guy said to me, what's an understudy? And I said, well, if something happens to the guy, then I go on. Not realizing what I just said. a true story. I told this on the Tonight Show. 10 minutes later, he comes over to me, this guy Carmine, and says, "Hey, Chess, can I talk to you?" And I said, "Yeah, what's up?" And he said, "Do you want to go on?" And I said, "Excuse me?" He goes, "Yeah, do you want to go on Broadway? We'll get you on." And then I realized what he was saying, and I went, no, you can't do that. And he said, "Don't worry, we'll make it look like a muggy, you'll be fine." So, it was, look, I talk about fun about the mafia, but what is the mafia? The mafia is a little segment in the Italian-American community. What are we all Italian-Americans? It's the working man. It's the working man, the cop, the fireman, the truck driver, the taxi driver, the butcher, the baker. These are the work, that's what Italian-American is. The mafia gets all the hype, but we are the working people. We have the blood of so many people in us. Think of the artists, Michelangelo, Dante. I mean, you have that blood inside of all of you. That is there from ancestor to ancestor. That's there. The artists, Valentino, Versace, Armani. I mean, it goes on and on. Be proud to be an Italian American. So, cut two. I go to Hollywood, and I can't get a break. I still want a break. I go on Hill Street Blues and shows like that, but I don't get that big break. And still, I have this dream. I have this dream of being somebody. So I ran out of money after a couple of years in LA, and I got a job as a doorman. Because I used to bounce, and I got a job as a doorman. That was the only thing I really knew how to do. I was always in the arts, singing, acting, whatever. And one night, I'm sitting there, and I'm making money. I'm making, my $20 tips like I always did. And a guy comes walking over to me, and he goes, "Excuse me, get the hell out of my way." And he was really rude to me. And I stopped him. I said, "Excuse me." I said, "I'm sorry." And he goes, "Do you know who I am?" Now, when a person says, "Do you know who I am?" he's an asshole. I have to say that. Don't ever say those words. Don't ever. If I go into a restaurant, they don't recognize me, I say, "Oh, it's okay, I'll wait." And then I'll walk to the side, and somebody will come over and they'll recognize me, and I'll get in. But I never go, "Do you know who I am?" That is a horrible thing to do. So I said to him, "Yes, I know who you are. You are the guy who's not getting in tonight." And he got really upset, and he said, "You'll be fired in 15 minutes. And 15 minutes later, I got called in to the boss, and the person I just didn't let in, now you guys are too young to know who he is. His name was Swifty Lazar. Now, Swifty Lazar was the biggest agent in William Morris in the world. In the world. And I just told him he couldn't get into his own party because it was his party. I got fired. I went home. I sat on the edge of my bed, and I said, "What am I going to do?" I was not a kid. I was in my late 30s. Okay? I was not a kid. And I sat on the edge of my bed and I said, "What am I going to do?" And on the refrigerator was this thing that said, "The saddest thing in life is wasted talent." Because it was the card my father wrote and told me about it. So I said at that moment, if they won't give me a great part, then I'll write one myself. And I wrote about this killing that I saw. For those of you who've seen the movie Bronx Tale, it's exactly the way it happened. I was sitting on a stoop with my hands out like this. This guy killed a man right in front of me. My father ran down, grabbed me by my arm, and dragged me upstairs. Exactly, just like the movie, the musical, and the one-man show. And I said, "I'll write about that. Because I'm tired of this mafia bullshit. I'm going to write about my dad. Because he's a hero. Your fathers are the heroes. Your mothers are the heroes." That's what an Italian American, we work hard. So I started writing, and I said, well, being an actor, I said, I'm going to perform all the parts. And people told me I was crazy. They said, "You're not a stand-up comic." I said, "No, I'm an actor. But I'm going to play all the parts." And they thought I was crazy. Big people said, "This will never work. Impossible." And I said, "Well, I'm going to do it anyway. If I fail, I fail. Taking a risk. You must take a risk." And I performed it, and my life exploded. exploded. I got all these reviews, I won all these awards, and I was on my way. But they didn't want to use me. They wanted to use one of the stars. You know, all the big stars in Hollywood at that time in the 80s wanted to play Sonny. And I said, no, I play Sonny and I write the screenplay. They said, forget it. I said, well then forget it. They offered me $250,000 to walk away. I said no. $500,000. I said no. $1 million. I said no. And then one night I did the show, and Robert De Niro was sitting in the back and saw the show. He called. He said to me that he sent somebody to get me, and I met him in my dressing room, and he told me. He said, look, you'll be great as Sonny, and you should write the screenplay because it's about your life. And if you shake my hand, that's the way it'll be. I shook his hand, and that's how Bronx Tale got made. And I just wanted everyone to know how that happened. How did it happen? By taking a risk, by showing up. Thank you.